Okay, so welcome back again. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on these very important questions. I would like now to share with you, and Sophia, can you share the slide? So we grouped everyone's concerns in a single slide that Sophia is sharing. And I think that we have a few minutes to discuss this, these very interesting takes. And so let's first focus on the top reasons that prevent you from sharing your research data. And I see here two areas. So I think that one is more oriented towards how to share, technical difficulties on how to share, either because you won't have a way to store or display your data properly, or you have technical difficulties with the size of the data, or you don't know exactly how data should be shared. And I highlighted these three because these are three areas where biodata can help you and provide you with the tools that you need to answer this aspect. So for instance, biodata has, let me just put it in the chat here, the DM portal, which you can use to as a repository to share data that you want to have publicly shared. And we would be happy to receive a contact from any of you who would like to use a DM portal for these reasons. Also, our computing platforms can also help with the technical difficulties with the size of sequencing data. And we have training programs on data management and data sharing that can help you answer your questions on how is the best way to share your knowledge. And then I see another aspect, which is, I think, more with intellectual property and trade secret. So you have your data, but you haven't really milked your data for all that it is worth. And so you don't want to share your data just yet. But I would like to maybe ask you, so for instance, for the first topic, I did not finish my project and it needs further experiments and the PI did not pursue it. So the reason for not sharing your data as is because you don't think it is valuable in its state, or because you don't want to share the data before you do the analysis and do the final publication. So I don't know which group said this, but I would like to perhaps understand a little bit.
It was us. And I've seen this happening in previous labs where I was, where someone produces data, it has it, but then it's a project that the PI loses interest in it. And therefore the person who's leaving the lab completely changes fields and that data gets lost. It will never see the light of day, no matter how valuable or invaluable it is.
Okay, and if it was easy to share that data, do you think that the people under that situation that you are familiar with would share the data if the hurdles of sharing were fewer and it was not so time consuming? Or do you think that there's just a general lack of motivation to pick it up?
The PI would always have the last decision.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure about that. It didn't happen to me, but I saw it happening to other people. And if the PI said, no, we're not going to make this public, the thing would die there. So it's probably data that would be good for other people to see, but it's just hidden, lost somewhere.
Okay, that brings me back to the topic of incentives for data sharing.
Mm-hmm. PIs as well.
for everyone, for PIs or any researcher, the incentive for data sharing. So because we have these two aspects where on one side you have that it is time consuming and you might not know exactly what is the best way to share your data and to publish your data, and you don't know exactly what kind of return you will get from sharing that data. And on the other side, it's like, I'm going to invest all of this time into doing this without having a clear vision of how that will benefit me and my research group in the end.
Yes.
And so I think that is a big challenge in data sharing, that probably is a cultural thing, and that I think that we as Biodata can at least help change that culture in Portugal, at least, if not.
It did not happen in Portugal. It was not in Portugal.
Yes, but I would say that happens everywhere. Right, the incentives are not there, but we as an association have, I would say that we can have the power as an association that has universities and institutions, from Minho to Algarve, to try to change a little bit how data sharing is evaluated by our national funding bodies.
I agree.
If data sharing was seen, okay, if you publish your data set with a DOI, so the digital object identifier, much the same as you have for a paper, and if that was accounted for in your, I don't know, Ciência Vitae, okay, and if you want to run for an FCT project that is accounted for, that counts for something, I think that the landscape could start to change, and I think that's something important. So that there's this other topic about the scooping, right? Number 4 and number 7, that it took me years to obtain the data, and I don't want somebody else to get my raw data and find something super interesting in the analysis and publish it first before I'm done with the data. And my question is, do you still share after you publish your first in-depth analysis?
Hello.
Hello.
I'm responsible for number 4, so I'll have to beat myself, I guess. No. So yes, we do share the data. In fact, actually, I don't work in a highly competitive field, in the sense that I'm not like working in drug things or whatever. Okay, so maybe it would be important to hear people who are more in competitive fields where it is actually more problematic for them. But even for us, I mean, when I say that, it's really as I say it. It's to do the work we do, we have to get funding, train people, go to the field, bring back the samples, analyze them in the lab, do the statistical analysis, etc. There's no way, there are too many people involved, there's PhD students, master students, myself, that we're just going to put the data and then somebody writes something with them. We have to first make the different things that we even wrote several years before we would do with the data. So it's not like we keep the data and we do nothing, or we wait and wait and wait. No, we do the things we said we did like 3, 4, 5, 10 years before sometimes. And that's what I mean. So apart from that, we do share the data. Our data are published. And in fact, many of the journals we work with force people to publish the data that are used in that paper. So it's not, but it is a fact. I think I wanted to say it like that because I think it's important. It's not just that I think that people really are just doing that. They work very hard to get there. They cannot just put them because now it's some sort of new way of seeing things. Maybe because there are more and more data scientists. So I don't know.
I completely understand your point of view, and And actually, I should say that at least personally, my concern is not this, that you make the data available with your paper. My concern is when I see papers that don't make the data available, right? If you wait for the paper and it takes you, I don't know how many number of years, but after you make your big publication, the data is there to go with it, in my opinion, perfect. And then after that, other people can benefit from the data, but you who did the first effort and got the funding and did the decades worth of work will get that first pick of the data, right? And I think that still makes complete sense. The problem is that in many cases, you will see the publication, and in different areas, maybe not yours, because not all journals are enforcing that policy. You will see the data, or you will see the paper, and the data associated does not allow for a replication of the study, or it's just a subset, or is very often just available upon reasonable request from the authors, right? So I think that those are two different aspects of not sharing, because what you have there is that I will share after I fulfill my goals for that data, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, we always share, and they're always published with the first papers, because the journals we publish in also have the same philosophy, with which we agree, that they will make the data available upon publication, not upon acceptance. Okay, even though sometimes it's upon acceptance, but it's pretty much the same.
Okay.
If I may, so I don't think the FAIR principles in any way require you to publish your data before you publish your research. Okay, people are obviously entitled to have an embargo for their data until a scientific publication is made. As Katia said, what concerns me is that people get to publish papers without actually sharing the data. And also that sometimes data doesn't lead to scientific publication. The project ends, people stop working, and the data gets completely lost. So after a project ends, you should have a period of 2-3 years at max to publish a paper. If you can't, then you should release your data, okay? Your data is not yours, it's public. It's assuming it's paid by public grants, then it belongs to the funder, in essence. You have the obligation to share it and publish it.
That is a cultural thing and a paradigm that is this not that easy. Lounès, sorry.
No. Maybe other people want to say something before I add something. I mean, I don't want to monopolize it. And again, it's not a real issue for us. As I said, we do share the data. So it's really, I thought this point is important because some people may not want to say it, but I think it is there. I think we would be blinding ourselves if we don't want to discuss that one point, because it comes also under point 7, as you noticed, scooping. It's the same kind of idea. Yeah. But in fact, I didn't want to use the word scooping, and I said it in the small room we were in, because it's not about scoops in our field. I mean, we're not going to discover a cancer drug or whatever. We work on endangered species, so it's a completely different issue. So there is no scooping here. So maybe others want to say something?
So I will just add that companies and even institutes that are working on discovering cancer drugs probably don't want to publish their data in the first place. And that is also perfectly fine. I mean, that is a legitimate use for public funding. If you then take it and develop a company that produces a drug, then you are putting money back into the economy. It's within your right to do it, okay? What is not within your right?
I mean, Danielle, you by saying what you just said, you said you are in your right. I mean, you have the right, again, to have that opinion, but it's a choice of a political system, okay? It's not a neutral point you're making. You have the right. I mean, these are people who spend their whole lives benefiting from the whole university free system, and then suddenly they want to make a private enterprise. Good for them. But to do it as if that's fair, I'm not sure I agree. But anyway, that's a political stance. You have one, I have another one, apparently.
I'm not talking from my own stance. I'm talking from the funders' stance. So the funders recognize your right to publish to have a patent and to create a marketable product from a research project. So I'm not defending my own viewpoint. I'm talking within the rules that we have in the European Union.
Yeah, I can understand, but what I'm saying is that these rules are not neutral. They correspond to a particular political belief, which is that people use public money to do all the research, and then suddenly they do a private thing and they think that the money is theirs. I think it's interesting because just before you told us we used public money to produce data, so this should be for everybody. They should be public. But suddenly, when it's to make money, this sort of idea seems to be disappearing.
I think there's both approaches. So you can either, if you don't want to produce value from your data, you should release it so that others can. That's contributing back to society. If you want to produce value, then you are contributing back to society in a different way. What shouldn't happen is that your data should not be stuck in a silo, inaccessible to anyone and without value to anyone.
Thank you, Claudia. So I think that we could, discuss this for a long time, and we will have other opportunities to bring these topics back to the table, but it is getting past our time, and I would still like to address the other side. So the reasons that prevent you from reusing data from others. And my take on these reasons would be, for us as a group and as a community, to reflect on these things. How many times were we responsible for actually not taking care of these things when creating data and making a publication that use data? So how many times did we not worry about standardization and metadata and about annotation and about documentation? So not all of them come at this level, but of these things. So I think that as the mandates for open science and as funding comes with a priority for verifying your data, this may be less and less common, but is still very much in place right now. And so the FAIR principles should help with these points. But there is one aspect that is not as directly related to the FAIR principles, and that I would like to discuss, which is the reliability and the trust in data. So points 4 and 9, which are basically the same aspect. And so I believe that FAIR does not directly give you a way to handle this quality control of the data per se, but at least it gives you tools. If the data sets are adequately described with metadata about the experiments that generated them, at least it gives you tools for reproducibility that might in some way mitigate this problem. But I think that we do currently have a reproducibility crisis in science. There have been many whistleblowers in this area, and I would like to ask if anyone would like to comment on this aspect of trust and reliability of the data that is shared or reused in this case. So if any one of the people that mentioned point 4 or point 9 would like to comment, it would be great.
Okay, maybe I can speak a little bit about the 9, which was the one that we added. Yeah, I think now that you were speaking, I was thinking, well, if it's you know, if I'm sharing my data, it's because I'm pretty confident about it. And if it's well documented, people should be able to reproduce it. Sometimes the problem comes not even if I go to, you know, not even if I go to a bank, a data bank. If I just go to my server and I try to find what each of us have there, it's already hard. So we're trying to remodel everything in here, and the first point is this: can we reproduce it? Sometimes we have to do them again just to be sure that, and if it's well documented or not. I don't know if my colleagues want to add something. Maybe they left already because we're running out of time.
Silvana?
Yeah, okay. Because reproducibility can be a problem also just for us. If I repeat an experiment that I did some times ago, it happened to me to have different results. And that's because, okay, maybe I did the first one in summer, and I work with lichens, so ecological setting and physiological response. So sometimes things that I didn't consider as relevant then prove to be relevant. And when we share the data, now I'm thinking that it's not only that we cannot consider other people data reliable, but sometimes also for our data we have the same problem. And that's why it should be important to have a standard a template, for example, to fill, to annotate all the possible data, even the data that I don't consider relevant at the moment. I don't know if you understand me. Maybe I'm not clear, but the more data you add, description you add of your experiment, the more can be reliable, it can be trusted. But there's always, I think, a small range of uncertainty about the data, and we have to live with it.
Danielle, would you like to comment on this description of metadata to describe an experiment, because you have worked in another field, but with similar issues?
Sorry, I did not get all of that because I was actually discussing still with Lunas in the chat.
You went down the politics rabbit hole. No, but I will briefly summarize. So Silvana was saying that she herself has had trouble with reproducibility of her experiments with lichen because at the time that she did the first experiment, she did not consider that the season or weather was an important factor. And then later on, when she tries to reproduce the experiment, gets different results, she understands that actually the time of the year when the experiment was conducted was a factor. And so that having a template with lots of metadata about the experiment that could be filled in, even with data that for the researcher at that point in time doesn't seem to be that relevant, okay, that would go a long way towards reproducibility.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that is, I think, a standard case. You should also always record the timestamp in which you made the data observation. So that would allow you to pick up later the season, or even cross your data with environmental data, for example, if you were doing a field study with plants. So you could cross it with environmental data for the location where you made the research. And yet there are generic templates that allow you to specify, let's say, the core metadata fields for whatever domain you work in. But then for each specific domain, you will find that there are metadata standards that cover that specific domain and add more depth of information that you should look to capture if you want to have fair data in that specific domain.
And so actually learning how to do this is something that Biodata can help you with. So if you find that you have this need, that you would like to better document your experiments with metadata that is standardized and shareable, that is something that we can help you with either through services or training. And so we would be more than happy to get you in touch with the right people to help you in that path. Okay, I think that the discussion has been very interesting. We didn't touch every point, but we are already past our finishing time. And I would like just to ask you if there is any final comment any of the participants would like to make.
I would like to make a comment. It is really interesting that some of the listed reasons why that prevent us from sharing our research data are a sort of influencing the reasons preventing us from reusing data from others. And I think this also is something that may add us in a reflection that we should try to balance this a bit more.
Thank you very much, Anna. If there isn't any further comments, I would like to thank again to our speakers and thank every participant for their very valuable and fruitful group discussions and for the plenary session. And thank you very much. Happy holidays. And do get in touch with Biodata if you find that there is anything in these areas, and especially for myself, that I'm working more in these areas of data sharing and reusing and management, we would be very happy to help you along.
Cheers, everyone.